Hey friends, Dr. Motley here with the Ancient Health Podcast. We're going to talk about the dark circles underneath the eyes. We're going to talk about the bags underneath the eyes and what are the implications that this gives you about the rest of your body. In Eastern medicine traditions and philosophy, the bags and dark circles underneath the eyes are associated with the functionality of the kidneys. So if you're waking up in the morning and you feel as though you're chronically fatigued, you feel tired all the time when you wake up, and you start to see the puffiness underneath the eyes, I want you to make the clear, distinct connection between that and the function of the kidneys in its association with the adrenals. Many times when we wake up, you'll look in the mirror and go, man, I just look tired. My eyes look so puffy. And that's all we think about. We think, well, as the day goes on, the puffiness will drain and subside, and we start to look normal after a few hours. But I want you to realize that there could be more serious implications. And it's a preemptive way for you to look at your eyes and say, what is going on in my body and what can I do to actually help increase the longevity, the vitality, the strength, and the energy of my body? And this in turn can actually help you with the dark circles underneath the eyes. Now, we know that the eyes are directly linked with the brain. And what's going on around the eyes is telling you what's happening to the brain. So if you're tired in the brain, you better believe that there's going to be some dark circles and swelling around the eyes. But let's look at this and give you an explanation, a simple explanation of what's going on around the eyes. And then what can we do to help with the treatment and the therapy to help you with this appearance, but also more importantly, to help the internal aspect of your body to heal and get stronger. So when we're talking about the dark circles underneath the eyes, there is that connection with the adrenals and the kidneys. So the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. And if you can watch the podcast, I'm holding up the Chinese medicine doll, but remember the kidneys are sitting right near the flanks, basically in your lumbar spine at L1 and L2 area, lumbar 1 and lumbar 2, right near the hips or the hip flexor insertion areas. Now, the kidneys are organs that are on both sides. And on top of them, there are the adrenal glands. Now, the adrenal glands are there to help you with fighting a problem or running from it. Fight or flight. Even some say fawn or freeze. Now, if you undergo stress, your body will want and require more blood pressure. So you have more blood flowing to the head and you have more blood flowing to the extremities so that you can think faster and you can run faster and fight if you have to. So when you are in a state where your blood pressure drops too low and you're chronically stressed, your kidneys release hormone such as renin, and this will initiate a response in your adrenal glands known as aldosterone. So if your blood pressure drops too low, your body realizes I need more blood pressure, more blood flow to help me with my stress. So chronic stress, chronic fight or flight requires higher blood pressure. And so this aldosterone will make your kidneys release or push out more potassium and magnesium, let it go through the urine, and hold on to more sodium. So you're holding on to more sodium, not only in the tissues of the body, but also in the arteries. And so the water volume also follows the sodium. It's osmotic pressure. So you have sodium that's flooding a certain area, and then you have water flowing into either the tissue or even into the artery or the lumen of the cardiovascular system or the vascular system. And so this expands your vascularity, increases basically the volume within your arteries or your veins. Does that make sense? So you have sodium being retained, you have water flowing following the sodium, so you have proper osmotic pressure, and it increases the volume within your venous and arterial system. Now, this will increase your blood pressure. Does that make sense? More volume within the arteries means more blood pressure. And this will ensure that you're getting more blood to the brain or to the muscles or to the extremities. Now, think about it. If you're in constant chronic fight or flight, you're requiring the release of renin, you're releasing more and more aldosterone, and this is going to affect what we call angiotensin. Now, what we're saying is, all in all, this is going to raise blood pressure and blood volume. Now, if this is occurring to the adrenals and to the kidneys, eventually it can wear out the adrenals and kidneys. And what that means is that if you're consistently triggering the fight or flight response, you're causing the kidneys to continuously create the renin. You're asking the adrenals to keep creating aldosterone. But what if you're so tired and so fatigued that you may not be taking all the nutrients to help support the kidneys or support the adrenal glands? They become worn out. So Hans Selye, S-A-L-Y-E, he talked about the adaptation triad. He said there's 4 levels. Like the first level of adrenal stress is like you react to it. Second is you start to adapt to it. Third is you become exhausted. And fourth is death. Now, if this is continuously happening, you get to exhaustion, you exhaust the adrenal glands, and it's not going to balance your potassium sodium levels very well because you're burning out. When this occurs, though, remember, you're holding on to a lot of sodium. This can create more swelling in the body overall. So if you're retaining water, right, if your ankles swell, if your lower extremities swell, if you notice this happens randomly, and it's alongside the swelling under the eyes, you're retaining more fluid. So this would tell me as a practitioner that you're undergoing adrenal stress and you're getting adapted to it. And this is causing your kidneys to overwork as well. So your body's attempting to increase the blood pressure to help your stress. So you're in the adaptation phase. This is getting close to where you're getting to the exhaustive phase, in my opinion. So as you're in adaptation phase, your body is holding on to as much sodium as it can, and this will represent itself in the face. So if you find yourself with a swelling underneath the eyes or the dark circles, it is also telling you not only you're holding on to sodium, but there's stagnation within the kidneys. Stagnation means there's not a lot of blood flow. There's not a lot of movement within the kidneys. There's fatigue, and there's probably infections. There's probably imbalances. Now, one of the biggest things that you're going to find with this retention is that you're going to see that there could be stage 1, 2, even 3 kidney disease. You could find high amounts of refined sugars that are damaging the kidneys and the actual tubes within the kidneys. And this stagnation within the kidneys can lead to kidney stones, kidney sludge, or issues where there's small stones or gravel that's built up within those tubes within the kidneys. So if you are in constant adrenal stress and you're in that adaptation phase, you weaken the kidneys so much they cannot pump blood well. They cannot get rid of all the actual toxins, the heavy metals that they're there to filter. In other words, as well, if you have chronic infection like strep or staph or even parasites, which your body is trying to get rid of every single day. We all have parasites. We all have yeast. We all have mold. We all have, candida and strep and staph. Now, your kidneys are there to help filter those things out, to push them into your urine, to help you urinate them out. But if you're in constant stress and you're adapting to the stress, your body has a bigger job to do because you're triggering it to help your stress. So your kidneys get worn out. They can't filter out the infections. They can't get rid of the heavy metals. They can't get rid of the excess mineralization. And what happens? You may have higher amounts of sugar intake because you're stressed. And you add that in together, and you start to have a perfect storm. The kidneys get tired, the kidneys get fatigued, and you're holding on to more infections. You're holding on to more heavy metals. And this causes a sludge, a stagnation within the kidneys. And so it starts to show within the facial features because there is a hologram effect in the body. There is a relationship where the face has a map, and the map has everything to do with certain organs. So we look at those areas underneath the eyes because underneath the eyes is where you're going to have a lot of fluid release, right? Through tears and through sweat. And you not only see it underneath the eyes, you can see it in the sweat glands underneath the armpits, the salivary glands. Yes, the kidneys can affect those as well. So you have this stagnation, blood stagnation in the kidneys. You have infections that could be getting higher and higher. So if you find yourself, now guys, follow this. If you find yourself having high amounts of kidney infection or kidney disease and you can't get rid of it, if you find yourself having heavy metals in, like, let's say a heavy metals test, you have to look at your kidneys. And if the kidneys are consistently weakened, this is showing within the face. So let's say that you're starting to see this in the morning when you look in the mirror and you go, man, I do have kidney disease, or I've always had kidney stones, or I keep having a reoccurring yeast infection or a urinary tract infection. I have consistent strep that keeps showing up on my blood work or my urinalysis. These are correlated. So you want to remove the swelling and the stagnation of blood by healing the kidneys. The stronger the kidneys, the more love you give to your kidneys will allow it to remove the infections, will allow it to do what? To also get rid of heavy metals, increase the blood flow around the kidneys, and also to help balance out the sodium and potassium levels. So number one, what should you do? You have to look at the emotional stress, the stress response that's creating the kidney issue. Now, this is where it can become, not say tricky, but this is what happens. What is the emotion that's most associated with the kidneys? In Eastern medicine and also in German New Medicine, it's fear, it's dread, it's fright. So if you have chronic fear, you want to run from the problem or fight it. It's going to initiate the adrenal response. It's going to drain the kidneys. So the kidneys in Chinese medicine are your life force. They basically hold the original qi, the original electricity that you came from your parents. And they also hold a lot of the electricity that's coming through the grounding effect up through the feet. Fear will require you to have more energy to fight the problem or run from it, right? So you have this effect where you have so much fear in the body because you're in fight or flight, but you require your kidneys to hold a big battery charge. That's what the kidneys are. They're big batteries. So fear consistently requires much from your kidneys, i.e. also from your adrenal glands. So do you find yourself in a constant fear phase? Do you find yourself always afraid? Something makes you fright or jump. Are you jumpy? Somebody will say hello behind you and you jump. Kidney fatigue. I want you to put these correlations together. So if you have chronic fright, the other thing that you could be experiencing emotionally is, do you feel like a fish out of water, like you don't belong? Afraid not to get forward in life. Maybe you're not afraid. Maybe you're just afraid of not moving ahead fast enough in life. Maybe you're afraid that you can't get ahead or that somebody else is going to succeed more than you and you'll be left behind. They call it the refugee conflict. Like you feel like, man, I'm basically a fish out of water. I don't belong in this group. Everybody's leaving me behind, or I just don't feel like I belong, or I'm going to be able to accomplish enough. That will drain the kidneys. That puts you into a constant fear state. So if you're in a constant fear state, it's going to mess up your aldosterone. It's going to mess up your sodium potassium levels. Number one is to figure out that fear factor. And if you have the fear factor, then we need to look into different types of techniques that will help you identify what you're afraid of. Maybe you already know what you're afraid of. Maybe you go, I already know that I'm in fright all the time. So if you're in a fight or flight and you're afraid, then there's techniques such as neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is a really good technique to allow the body to bring the internal circuitry of the programs that are running in fear up to the surface of the brain so that they can be processed properly. Look into neurofeedback. There's lens therapy, LENS. I also love to use, you've heard me say this before, but I love acupuncture and acupressure. Literally acupuncture and acupressure to help with the kidney function and the adrenal function, known as triple warmer. So ask your acupuncturist or look into a book such as Acupressure Made Simple by Deborah Bleecker, Bleecker. And look at the patterns to help with the kidneys. Truly, the kidneys, if you guys can follow, are very, very much stimulated in certain areas around the ankles and feet. But some of the main areas that I find that are very accessible is the kidney 27 right here below the collarbone, right where the collarbone meets the sternum. Also, kidney 5, 6, and 7 on the insides around the ankle bone. You can do acupressure on these areas every day. I do that. You can get acupuncture by an acupuncturist to help the kidneys. And I guarantee you, when you start to get more blood flow and more chi, more electricity to the kidneys, they'll open up. It'll strengthen them to flush more metals, to get rid of more infection, to actually help with the grounding capability of the kidneys, to actually pull up a grounding charge from the earth and hold them in the batteries of the kidneys. So acupuncture or acupressure helps rejuvenate those kidneys. Other emotional techniques that I really like is neuro-emotional technique by Scott Walker, Dr. Scott Walker. NET is a really great technique. So find a kinesiologist, an applied kinesiologist in your area that does NET. That's another way to do that, to process it. One of the quickest and simplest way is EFT tapping. So if you're doing EFT tapping, you would tap all the beginning and ending points of all the meridians. But one of the ones I usually always really make sure that I am addressing is going to be the kidneys and the bladder. And then address the fears. These are some options. And you think, well, I'm just going to be pressing points and tapping points. No, you are treating yourself. I think it's one of the biggest things that you can do is to take the power back in your own hands when you're trying to work on these emotions. And it helps your talk therapy go even better, your counseling to go even better. When you start to rejuvenate the kidneys, you actually have battery power to actually process. So neurofeedback, you could look into NET, get a good acupuncturist, or learn acupressure on those kidney and bladder meridians. And also you can look into EFT tapping. This is a way for you to bring more chi, more blood flow, more electricity back to the kidneys. Now, I add in certain herbs to help with the kidneys, to help with the dark circles and the bags under the eyes. I always use uva ursi, UVA-URSI, uva ursi. I also check into dandelion tea. I like cranberry at times. I usually use uva ursi over cranberry. But also D-mannose, which is a sugar that a lot of the bacteria will latch onto, and you can then urinate out the bacteria. But if you always find that you have E. coli or salmonella or H. pylori or some kind of strep or staph always in the urine, and they say, well, it's not really a urinary tract infection, we can't find high markers, that means that there's a chronic urinary tract infection. It's just not high enough for them to register on a normal urinalysis that this is going on. So please don't treat as though this is a light infection, that it's not an infection. You want to get rid of it. So I like uva ursi, I like dandelion tea, sometimes I throw in cranberry and maybe some D-mannose. I also like phyllanthus, which is known as stone breaker. I put that in there to help break up the stones within the kidneys. It's called Bodyguard Supreme. Bodyguard Supreme is a really good supplement to help with breaking up the stones. Now, when you have the stone breaker, when you have this plus uva ursi, you're going to rejuvenate the blood flow and the cleansing of the kidneys. As you start to flush them out, you will regulate the health of the kidneys, which means it will help literally reduce your stress because you have more capacity to keep your adrenals healthy because the kidneys are now functioning at a higher rate. So not only can you start to work on the emotions, but you're going to use this biochemistry to help increase the strength of the kidneys. You'll retain more of that battery power, and you'll actually have more energy to help not only fight the stress, but process it. And realize, do I really need to be afraid of this? Do I really want to keep processing this stress? It makes you more aware of the stress. So if you start to heal the kidneys and the adrenal glands and heal your stress, you'll reduce your fight or flight. You'll reduce the amount of sodium you retain because you don't need the higher blood pressure. You won't be as swollen. And the bags underneath the eyes, the swelling will go down. You increase the blood flow and get that blood cleaned out, and the darkness goes away. You see how that all starts to correlate together. So when you use these herbs and these emotional techniques and maybe do some acupressure and acupuncture, also with physiotherapy, with chiropractic, always look into the upper lumbars, L1 and L2, and even the sacrum area where these nerves are associated with the kidneys and the bladder. Getting consistent good chiropractic care and physical therapy care is going to help with these areas and help you flush. You'll see your fears reduce. I see it all the time in the office. So with the eyes showing the way they do, look at the uva ursi and the dandelion and things I just mentioned, but use these steps to help heal the kidneys. You can use bounding. You could also use hip flexor training to actually stimulate more blood flow to the kidneys through a physical activity. That's why people's hip flexors are always tight. They say, man, I can do all the things in the world, but they're always so tight. Why can't I get loose? Because there's an infection. There's chronic fight or flight. There's heavy metals within the kidneys. Please use your eyes as an indicator of what needs to go on within the kidneys. If you can't get rid of those dark circles, this is a step that will help you. You can put on all the lotions in the world, all the creams. I understand there's many that reduce it, but if you really want to get down to the grit floor, the grittiness of what's going on, the base floor, then get the kidneys healed up. So I want you to know that the bags underneath the eyes are not necessarily always cosmetic. It's definitely an internal imbalance happening within those areas. So let's work on this, guys. Let's work on the emotions. Let's work on cleaning up the kidneys. Let's work on getting rid of that fear, and you'll start to see the dark circles start to fade. Guys, I hope this was informative. Remember, use a face as a template. Until the next time here at the Ancient Health Podcast, I'm Dr. Motley. We'll talk soon. And if you guys like this kind of, setup, if you like this kind of talk, please drop us a comment in the comment section. If you like this kind of subject matter, subscribe and like, and I hope that you guys have a blessed day, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.